No, this is the third hearing. It's the an extra hearing pre-map. And as you just stated, we're going to have the maps come out next Monday, the 24th, and we will have hearing on those May 1st. There's also an additional hearing on May 6th at 2 p.m. That's a Saturday. And then the final hearing is scheduled for May 22nd. That's a Monday, but it's not a regular council meeting day. So we're taking public comment and we're taking maps. We're taking anything anybody wishes to give us. We're sending them directly to the demographer. And as I said, the maps will be available on the website on the 24th next Monday. I don't yet know what time, but those will be out on the 24th.
And just to clarify, when the maps are published on May 24th, how will those be accessible by the public?
They should be on the website. People can pull them up and look at them.
Okay. Is there any sort of notification that will be going out to alert that the maps have been published? Can we put that on our billboard or some other?
Yes, we will use all of our social media to do that.
Thank you. Before we go to public comment, I'll just give council an opportunity if anybody has anything they want to say. Okay, thank you. And before I open live public comment, I just want to make note that we did receive written correspondence on this item from Michelle Simone and Javier Gomez. I have a couple of speaker cards, so let's just start with those. Susan Hedgepeth. Welcome, Susan.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Susan Hedgepeth. I've been a resident of Pleasant Hill for 22 years. I live at Pleasant Hill Co-housing on Lisa Lane. First, I'd like to say a word of thanks to you and your staff for your responsiveness to the several emails that I've sent since the meeting on April 3rd. At that meeting, you had made some commitments having to do with notice to residents. You followed through with putting all the hearing dates on your website, a big sign outside the library, and sending postcards to all residents. Thank you. Unfortunately, the timing wasn't great. It would have been better if you'd been a little faster doing those things, particularly since this meeting tonight is the last one where folks can make public comment about communities of interest before the demographer comes up with the draft maps. I only received my postcard today. And the sign at the library appeared on Saturday. That seems very short notice. I am here tonight because I already knew about the meeting, but there may well be folks who would have liked to be here, but the notice was just too late. And the notice does not list the actual dates of upcoming meetings. I do also appreciate that you took seriously the need to translate the information into several languages. I see that on the website, the library sign, and the postcard. Good job. What I'd like to speak to now is the idea of drawing 4 districts with an at-large mayor. I am not in favor of that plan. I think it would dilute the representation of minority communities in our city because there would likely be only one majority-minority district with 1 representative on the city council. Also, having an at-large mayor would be a significant change from the way the city is organized right now. And I'm concerned that that would take up a lot of time and be confusing. Perhaps that's something the city might want to consider in the future when there's more time to really look at it, what's involved. But for now, I support the creation of 5 districts with a rotating mayor. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing the draft maps on April 24th.
Thank you, Ms. Hedgepeth. Next speaker is Marian Sostrom.
Good evening, Mayor Flaherty, Vice Mayor Rinn, and council members. Thank you very much for listening to community members who asked for more outreach in multiple languages, and I received my card in the mail today. Thank you too for adding a Saturday meeting to to review the district maps. I really appreciate the fact that you've been listening to people who live here. I'm here to really encourage the demographer to use the data provided in the maps submitted to the city of Pleasant Hill. And I'm referring to the school ranking map by neighborhood and the safest Pleasant Hill neighborhoods map. These two maps give a lot of data that will be really helpful for the demographer to understand that different neighborhoods in Pleasant Hill have different needs and different problems. And so I think it will be useful for all of us to use that information to help everyone in Pleasant Hill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Sjostrom. I don't have any other cards, but I'm sure there's other speakers.
We got one coming
We
up.
have one. Dr. Tran? Did you want to speak now? You're the,
Maybe tomorrow.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Kui Tran and I'm a resident of Pleasant Hill. Just want to state clearly that I'm here tonight on my own accord. I'm not affiliated with any litigation or any association with any groups that are affiliated with any litigation. I'm registered as no party preference and have no interest in parties or politics. My opinions are my own and do not reflect any organization for which I have an affiliation. But as Councilman Chess can attest to, I have a sincere and unwavering interest in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I will stand up in support of that goal every single time. I want to take a moment to address some ill-informed and frankly hurtful comments made here recently. One, I was disheartened to hear that the city was unaware that certain minority groups existed in Pleasant Hill. And two, that the city would consider the lack of minority presence in council chambers as a sign that minorities just do not care. We are not invisible. I am not invisible. I am an immigrant. I'm Asian American, and I too live in Pleasant Hill. I belong to a community that's been discriminated against, attacked, and racially profiled, sometimes by the hands of our own government. And yes, it does happen here in Pleasant Hill too. But I also belong to a community that wants our children to succeed, to enjoy economic prosperity, to have equitable health care, to have fair housing, and to live in a safe and welcoming city. Just because minority groups do not have trust in governmental institutions doesn't mean that the city should confuse being disenfranchised with being disinterested. We are interested in what happens in a city, and if we aren't packing the chambers, it's because the city has not done enough to create the safety and the trust needed for us to do so. Minority groups deserve respect, and minority groups deserve to be acknowledged. We shouldn't have to email the city a dozen times just to get something translated. And we shouldn't be blamed for a lack of engagement if the city itself has at most lackluster enthusiasm for this process. If the message coming from the city is that we are doing this because someone is making us doing this rather than it's the right thing to do, that the city embraces this diversity and that the city looks forward to change, how can you expect people to care if the city does not reciprocate? Now, having said all that, now that we are in a third pre-map meeting, I do see that there are a few in the city that are trying their best to engage minority populations. It would have been nice to have had the city reach out and partner with some of us active in the various communities of interest. The website, the translations, the cards, the physical signs have all been a good start, but it's only been a start. With only 3 post-map meetings left, people are just starting to pay attention. But it's going to take a lot more to get more people engaged. As you know, the map presented last week was just simply to spark interest, with the exception of the Northeast District as well as the East District, both of which should be preserved because of strong majority minority coalitions. The lines in other districts could almost be anywhere. It's not the lines so much as getting people engaged that is the most important thing. And I'm glad that the map provoked questions and inquiry. I'm asking the city to take a more proactive approach. Really reach out to minority groups. We deserve the same attention just like everyone else. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Tran. Are there any other speakers here in the audience? We'll turn to Zoom. Do we have any speakers on Zoom?
We have 3 hands raised.
Great.
Mr. Lewis, please proceed.
Yes, am I off of mute?
Yes, Mr. Lewis, we can hear you.
Yes. Okay, sorry about that. I would like to echo the
No, we
earlier.
can't hear you.
How about now?
We heard you before you turned your camera on.
How about now? Hello?
Yeah, so I could see you typing hello, but we can't hear you. Or is that the
Okay.
transcription from his end?
No, no, I'm just speaking.
Hmm.
Technology is a strange thing.
Maybe hang up and call in again?
Okay.
I agree. Can we move to the next speaker while Mr. Lewis tries again, and we'll wait for him?
Ms. Simone, please proceed.
Oh, hello, my name is Michelle Simone and I'm a Pleasant Hill resident. And I'm speaking today to express concerns regarding a proposed 4-district map with the at-large mayor for our city. Since the goal for creating districts hopefully is to ensure fair representation for all residents, I believe that an at-large mayor would fall short of this goal. In particular, I'm concerned that a 4-district map would dilute the minority vote in our city. As mentioned before in public comments, both the Northeast and Southeast Pleasant Hill look like we have a minority-majority coalition. So in addition to the coalition, both of these areas have strong communities of interest. If these two neighborhoods were kind of forced to fit into a 4-district mold, it looks like it would diminish their voting power at city council because the percent of minority voters would decrease in those areas. For best community representation, I hope the city council adopts a 5-district map, as a 5-district map would give residents the opportunity to elect 2 council members from diverse communities with unique needs and interests. And each of those council members would have the chance to represent their district and the city as a whole as mayor. A rotating mayor would provide each council member and therefore each district the opportunity to speak up and work together to set the agenda for discussion items during city council meetings. Whereas an at-large mayor would allow city council to have two representatives from one district, which would tilt the balance of voting power in favor of that one specific district. A fair map for fair representation would have a rotating mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simone. Has Mr. Lewis returned?
Yes, we're going to bring him into the room.
Okay, is this working now?
Perfectly.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So I would like to echo the comments that have been made about sticking with a 5-member council with a rotating mayor as opposed to 4 districts and an at-large mayor. The city of Pleasant Hill does break relatively cleanly into 5 chunks. The city is basically a big square of roads. So you have the central area and then areas on either sides. Additionally, it's generally it just based on my limited experience, the rotating mayor system works significantly better. It's a more equal relationship among council members and so on. I would also like to echo the remarks that have been made about ensuring that the minority coalition areas that are up by DVC and that are on the Concord side of Contra Costa Boulevard, ensuring that those 2 areas each have their own districts, that they are each treated as communities of interest. It is very important to avoid cracking those minority areas and dividing them into different districts. When I tried doing some unfair maps to see what those would look like, that was the main way that it ended up taking shape. So it's very important that those areas have their own districts. And finally, I know this is going to seem like a very minor point, but I have seen some maps floating around that have the districts not in an intuitive order. That's what Contra Costa is set up like for the Board of Supervisors, where you have District 1 is in the west, and then District 2 is in the south, and then District 3 is in the east, and 4 is in the middle, and 5 is in the north. And it's extremely unintuitive and a pain in the neck to work with. So I would encourage the demographer to just try to have the district numbers in order. I know that it seems minor, but future generations will thank you. And this concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. We have a third caller on Zoom.
Yes, we have one more hand raised.
Good evening, City Council. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor. Good evening, residents of Pleasant Hill. Can everyone hear me fine?
We can hear you fine. Be sure to say your name.
My name is Andre Obolensky. Did not come up. I'm using my wife's Zoom, so I apologize. I fielded a lot of phone calls today when this mailer came out. And one of the main questions that was asked, and I'm sure we have an answer to it, but I just want to make sure it goes on public record. The question I'm about to ask is many residents said, hey, why are we only looking at districting and not taking consideration either term limits and or ranked choice voting, which would be other ways to to follow the California Fair Voting Rights Act. So if, at some point during this meeting or the next meeting, if that could be vocalized so that those residents who are now aware of the process would understand why we're going through this districting process and not the other two, would be helpful. The other thing is I want to echo the comments of the 5-district process. I did look at 4 districting along with the mayor as well. And although a lot of people say, hey, I'd like to have 2 people that represent me and be able to vote twice, there's just no way that you can make the map work. So I'll be short and sweet. And that's what I came on here to say today. And thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Obolensky. Any other callers on Zoom?
There are no more hands raised.
All right, turning back to the live audience. Anyone feeling inspired to give public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back to council for discussion, if any.
No, I have a question.
Sure.
At our meeting coming up, the Saturday meeting, are we going to facilitate public comment at that time?
It's a
Okay.
public
there's always
meeting,
public
public
Okay,
comment
I just want that to be, because
in person or
Okay.
by Zoom.
I just want to
Yeah,
make
there's
that,
always
make that clear, that there will be public comment.
Well, I've received a number of emails, as the rest of the council have, with people weighing in on their views on neighborhoods and influences. And I live in the Poets Corner neighborhood, and I've given a lot of thought to, what I think, my area is beyond just my immediate neighborhood. And I think my attention is more directed eastward than westward from Poets Corner. So from my perspective, my area is bordered on the west by Pleasant Hill Road, probably on the south by Oak Park, on the north by Gregory. And I think it goes all the way, I think it goes to the other side of the freeway, just when I orient where I am, but it probably ends at the freeway. And so I think it includes the Pleasant Valley neighborhood, as opposed to, I think, some of the other people who don't live in that neighborhood have expressed that neighborhood should be combined with neighborhoods on the eastern side of Contra Costa or the freeway. And those are just my thoughts, sharing my public comment, right? Vice Mayor Wren.
Yeah, there's been a couple of comments about maps that are floating around, and I just wanted to kind of clarify there's no maps that have been presented at this point from the city. These are just individuals creating their own maps on their own through whatever means they are, and then they're sharing amongst other people and either posting them or passing them around. And so I just wanted to kind of clear up any confusion. These are not the demographer, the professional demographer, and the maps that we have come out with. That hasn't started until our next meeting, or the maps will be released on Monday, the 24th. So there are no official maps out there yet. It's just people making their own maps at this point and passing them around. So I just want to clear up some confusion out there because people are alluding to different maps that have been out there and we have not presented any maps yet. So I just want to clear that up.
I think that's a good clarification. Thank you. Any other comments?
I just wanted to address the 4-district map. I wanted to see that just to see if it's even possible to do. If you can't do it, that more or less ends that conversation. So I wanted it for informational purposes, and I think it's good to have. Other than that, I want to wait and see what the maps are like on the 24th and get serious about the discussion at that point.
Thank you. And
Yeah, just real quick, I would echo Councilmember Vincent's view on that as well. I think I think it makes sense for us to take in as much information here, not only for those on the dais, but for the residents as well. So to me, I don't think it hurts to just look at that information and see what those districts look like. I don't think that hurts to have that. That doesn't mean that the decision is going to be made in that direction just because it's presented that we're looking at that. So I think that makes, I'm looking forward to the conversation as well as we move forward.
Yeah. I just want to follow up with the city attorney comment from one of the public comments this evening about alternatives to district elections as a way of complying with the California Voting Rights Act. If the city went to ranked choice voting, would that be compliant with the CVRA and not require district elections?
I'm going to let Jim Priest answer that question.
Thank you. And the other comment also was term limits, as those were two alternatives to districting, and I'd like to hear from you on that.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the City Council, honorable staff, members of the public. Jim Priest, Best and Krieger. Let me answer the second option first, which was the term limits. Term limits is an entirely separate concept under the law. It is not a remedy under the CVRA for alleged violations due to at-large elections. So there are two separate issues. Term limits have to be approved by local voters. There's a whole separate process for that. So they're really apples and oranges. If the city council or the citizens by initiative thought term limits were a good idea in Pleasant Hill, that could be put on the ballot, but it would be an entirely separate issue. As for ranked choice voting, there have been some rare circumstances where California charter cities have done ranked choice voting to settle a CVRA lawsuit. However, that is unique to charter cities. There is no state law that authorizes a general law city to go to ranked choice voting at this point. So that is not an option. It's a charter city thing only at this point. I know there's been discussion about changing the elections code to allow ranked choice voting for general law cities, but that's just a concept right now.
Thank you, Mr. Priest. Yeah. So good. Mike, seeing no other comments from City Council, we'll close this item and move on to our next action item,